Steve Keim is my buddy. 3 playoff appearances in 10 years as GM of the Arizona Cardinals, an NFC Championship appearance, NFC West title. Okay, so you drafted Kyler Murray. Let's start, Steve, with that. We had some discussion earlier. I think he has magic that few players on earth have at the position. I would play him. I wouldn't worry about getting the number 1 pick. I want him out there. I want this coaching staff to get some sense going into next season, what we can do, what we can't. Would you be concerned about playing Kyler?
I would not. I would not, Colin. And I've always been a proponent that you draft a guy like that with the first overall pick. And obviously it was during the time that I was there. But, he's a guy it's going to be very, very hard to replace in terms of his skill set. I mean, the guy has just got everything you look for in terms of arm strength, accuracy, the ability to use his feet to continue to extend plays. Coming back on the ACL, you want to see what he can do. And I would think that he used this time probably very well to study the game a little more, to continue to understand his progressions. And I think when Kyler Murray comes back and he's healthy, I think you're going to see some good things out of him and some improvement where he's matured, probably from the mental standpoint.
Okay, I'm going to give you a handful of players who are rumored to be on the market potentially. And they're on teams that aren't very good. And if those teams lose this weekend, I do believe, you've been a GM, you know what happens. Sometimes it's like, hey, listen, if I can get draft capital, this guy's expensive, we're not going anywhere. So Derrick Henry, I think it fits in Dallas, but Derrick Henry of the Titans, last year of his contract, right? You don't have to sign him forever. Is there anywhere he fits? Would you be interested?
Derrick Henry, you nailed it. The Dallas Cowboys for me. I would love to see a star on the side of this guy's helmet. I mean, you see his size, his physicality, his ability to control the clock in Dallas with that big offensive line up front, and to be able to help and take some pressure off Dak Prescott, I think is huge. Obviously, Pollard is a very good back, but to be able to add someone like Derrick Henry, who's going to set to be a free agent after this season, Colin, I think the one thing you got to take into account when you're making these trades is not only the compensation, but the salary. He's a guy that has, I think, $5.8 million left on his salary for the remainder of the season. And the thing you have to be concerned about is some of these teams don't have that type of room. Generally, they usually have enough room to be able to have injury replacements. But aside from that, they're going to have to convert set contracts and to be able to make the salary cap room necessary to add a guy like Derrick Henry.
Saquon Barkley, let's say the Giants lose. He may not be on the market, but could you see somebody saying, hey, let's Buffalo, we are not explosive enough. I mean, where would a Saquon Barkley potentially work for you?
I would love to see a guy like Saquon Barkley with the Baltimore Ravens, a team that obviously has the ability to run the football, not only from the backfield spot, but from their quarterback position, but to take some pressure again off of the quarterback, which again, Lamar Jackson has done a fantastic job, looked great last week. Anytime you can take the pressure off, he fits in that part of the country, playing at Penn State a couple hours away. I just think the Baltimore Ravens would make a lot of sense for me.
Hunter Renfrow, slot receiver, Raiders. By the way, you get into these situational playoff games, Steve, guys like Hunter Renfrow, they move the chains. I think he's a very interesting player in the right spot. Is there anywhere that works for you?
Well, I think, a natural team that would make sense is the Patriots. Obviously, their record would not indicate that. But to play for a guy like Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien, who've had success with players like Welker and like Amendola in the past, a guy that fits that mold. The other team I could see, obviously, is the Saints, just because of the connection he had with Derek Carr.
Okay. I'm going to move off Cortland Sutton. Let's do Jerry Jeudy. So he can be a bit flighty. He's got speed. I don't know how committed, but I do know this. He can be a little bit of a game changer because of the gears he can shift to. Denver's not going anywhere. Kansas City's going to win that division. They're 13-0 in their last 13 games in division. I think it's around there. Jerry Jeudy gets talked about a lot. Does he work anywhere to you, Steve?
To me, Colin, this would be a situation that would be a little different. I would actually add a guy like Jerry Jeudy. I believe he's 24 years old for the future. I think he has $1.5 million left on the remainder of his year, and I think $12 million next year. But a team like the Carolina Panthers, who don't have an explosive wide receiver to make sense down the field, it's another Alabama guy added to your roster. Hopefully for Bryce Young, it would be a guy that he could grow and improve with throughout the years, and maybe make a long-term commitment to him if you like him.
Okay, finally, Danielle Hunter, Russian Vikings. Everybody wants an extension of pass rush. I thought the Rams should look at it, but I don't think they're a playoff team. What do you make of him?
I'd love to see him with the Jacksonville Jaguars. A team that scores a lot of points, and then obviously somebody that you can continue to add to your defensive side of the ball, where you're explosive. You can get upfield. They have a number of good players in Jacksonville on both sides of the ball, but to be able to add a 28-year-old pass rusher that can get after the quarterback, I think makes a lot of sense in Jacksonville.
I want to talk about Philadelphia. Howie Roseman is kind of an obsessed deal maker. They went out and got a safety, and we kind of joke, like, what bank are they using? Are they using a Swiss bank? They have money, they make deals, and it's sort of their culture. I can say this, is they're a rich team. You were in Arizona, not a rich team. Raiders aren't a rich team. Rams are. Eagles are. San Francisco is. There are teams that have it. So Philadelphia can write big checks. Were you surprised? Safety's generally not a position you want to pay big money to. What do you make of Philadelphia's deal-making and getting Baird from Tennessee, the safety?
Howie Roseman right now is the best in the game. I mean, he's on point. He does a great job understanding the pulse of his football team. And more than anything, nobody works the phone like Howie. Being a general manager for 10 years, you can count on at least a phone call a week from Howie Roseman to see if there's any deals to be made. So he does a great job. He stays on top of things. And more than anything, Colin, he's ultra aggressive. And then sometimes in that position, so many of these general managers get on the phone. They want to talk about deals, but they're not ready to pull the trigger. Howie Roseman is always ready to pull the trigger. And again, he's very aggressive and understands what his team needs.
Yeah. I one question on the Bills last night. I think Sean McDermott's fine. I have no real criticism of Ken Dorsey. But I do feel like with Justin Herbert and with Josh Allen, it's a defensive head coach, bit more of a rigid culture. And I think they're being a tad underserved by their coaches. I do think a young quarterback, generally, that's when you went and got Cliff Kingsbury, right? Like, it's like an offensive-minded coach to put their arms around a young quarterback, and you can learn the sport together and the game together. When you watch the Bills, I'm watching that game last night, and I'm like, why are they not putting them away? They're clearly a better team with a superstar quarterback. Right. What do you do if you feel like we're not making up ground on Mahomes? We're losing ground right now to the Ravens. I'm not saying panic, but do they have to make a move, either a trade deadline move or a coach move in Buffalo?
I think if anything, Colin, maybe the coach move, and maybe not a coach move to replace somebody, but maybe somebody added to the staff that has a lot of knowledge that can help a guy like Josh Allen. To me, Josh Allen's style of play says it all. He's a risk taker. He's a guy that's going to try to force it into coverage at times because of his arm strength. He's going to be a guy that takes chances with his legs, and he's going to put himself in harm's way physically. So to me, he's a guy that's always going to take chances. Now, can you minimize some of the risk? That would be the question I would ask. Can you put him in a better position to succeed on a day in and day out basis? Because to me, more than anything, it's about playing with consistency at that position. And if there's anywhere that Josh Allen, I feel like he could grow, it's from a consistency standpoint.
By the way, trade deadline Tuesday. In your history, any concerns about trade deadline? Did you take a swing that missed? Did you take a swing that landed? Do you worry about chemistry? Cowboys, Derrick Henry, how would it play in the room? Just give me kind of a wrap it up in a minute here or two. The trade deadline moves. What is a GM thinking before he makes that call and signs that paper?
Well, again, there's so many things that go into it, Colin. One is the financials. Two, you want to know a little bit about something about the player. So if you have somebody on your staff that has had access to that player before or has coached them in the past, it's certainly beneficial, because it's really, really tough if you don't know a player. You don't know how they are in the locker room. You don't know how they would transition. You don't know if they love it or they don't. So you're really taking a big risk here. And again, like you said, how does a locker room sort of open their arms and welcome a player from another team, especially whenever they're generally pretty loyal to the guys at that position that are already on the squad. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it, but you got to be willing to take the risk. And I think that you'll see in the next couple of weeks, some of these teams are going to take the risk because they're right there. Like you said, it could be one guy that gets them over the hump. And if that's the case, you got to take the swing.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter, your suggestion to the Jags from the Vikings, to me, makes so much sense. Listen, if you have to go through Mahomes or Burrow or Lamar, If you got to go through those guys, you got the star quarterback, you got to make their quarterback less comfortable. I think that Hunter to the Jags, that really interesting.
And the one thing we always talk about, Colin, is pass rushers, guys who can cover. Those guys are impossible to find. And you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's 4-2, isn't the sexiest team in terms of, on paper. But then you look at them and they've given up 684 yards in the passing game. So their secondary has really struggled. To me, a guy like Patrick Surtain right there is a guy that you would go after and really make a big run at because of the talent at that position that's so hard to find. And the fact that team is 4-2 and has struggled to cover players.
That's good stuff. Steve Keim, as always, buddy, good seeing you again. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.